sustainable food tastes best when shared, in order to dive into the reality of food system transformation within Europe. Today, I am going to be your moderator. I am Jorrit Kielik. I'm the Executive Director of the Slow Food Youth Network, a global movement that fights for a more sustainable food system. And we are one of the project partners of the Shared Green Deal project. Before I start off, let me briefly explain you what the Shared Green Deal project actually is. Shared Green Deal's core goal is to stimulate shared actions on Green Deal initiatives across Europe by providing social sciences and humanities tools to support the implementation of 8 EU Green Deal policy areas at the local and regional level. This research on the green transition has thus far focused on changes to either individual experiences, so the micro level, or societal organizations, the macro level. Shared Green Deal, however, innovatively focuses on the middle range, the meso level changes, to bridge these two levels. With regards to this meso level, the project will produce applied guidance to facilitate change and will link the societal actors together to foster knowledge transfer and harness their collective experience to then feed back into the macro level. Shared Green Deal thus stimulates the behavioral, social, and cultural change across Europe, aligned with the EU Green Deal policy priorities. Importantly, the project takes a transdisciplinary approach covering 19 social science and humanities disciplines and incorporates multi-stakeholder, practice-based, and policy science expertise. Moreover, gender studies is a key component that will guide activities through the project's lifetime. Shared Green Deal will deliver changes in societal practices and in the behavior of individuals, communities, and public and private organizations. Today, we dive into the practices we're following in different European countries with regards to the food system. From Sweden's pioneering approach to food environments to the Netherlands' cutting-edge short-chain food strategies. From Slovakia's community-driven initiatives to Italy's agricultural production meeting modern sustainable challenges. This webinar hopes and promises to a dynamic exploration of success stories that hold the key to a more sustainable and resilient food future. Before we kick off with the best practices in Europe, we would like to share more about the thematic of food transitions by itself. And for that, our partner P.J. Beers will tell you more about that. P.J. Beers is a researcher, lecturer, and consultant at Drift and lecturer New Business Models for Agriculture and Food Transition at Haas University of Applied Sciences. In his scientific research, P.J. concentrates on learning and monitoring in transitions. And as a lecturer, P.J. is continuously looking for knowledge and tools to strengthen and support new business models and to accelerate the transition in food and agriculture. P.J. mainly works in the domain of agriculture and food transition, but also has expertise on the topic of energy transitions, the role of governments in transitions, and the transitions in green education. P.J., the floor is yours.
So thanks very much, Jorrit, and good morning, everybody. Thanks for your introduction, by the way. I hope I can be clearly heard by everybody, and I'll be off for a quick start. So, agri-food transition, what is that? Where are we coming from? Where are we going to? What type of change are we talking about when we talk about transition? And what I like to do always is first to take a step back to the time a little bit after the Second World War, which in the Netherlands ended with a hunger winter and then sparked a green revolution, and I think across Europe. One person was quite essential for that movement, and that was Sikko Mansholt. He was first a Minister for Agriculture in the Netherlands, and then in 1958, the European Commissioner for Agriculture. And the type of development sparked from a creed of never war again, never hunger again, was one of intensification, specialization, mechanization, chemical pest control, fertilizer use, all kinds of technological development that really changed the way that our food was made, where it was made, by whom it was made. The number of farmers dropped precipitously, because there was much less labor needed on the farm. The plots became much bigger. The landscape changed. And this, I think, is still an ongoing development. I think it's very important to point out there's technological developments, but it's interchange with all kinds of different developments as well. Our diets have changed in the interim. Because of mechanization in dairy farmers, the nipples across the udder of a cow are now distributed more evenly than they were before the Green Revolution. And where does all this take us? And I'm just saying this, it's not just technology, a transition, it's also culture, it's also the landscape, it's also who's in charge of the food, it's also how is it distributed. And then it might look like something like this. A hand-holding farm, the greenhouses, the dairy farming, huge milk robots, which is not to say that this is the picture everywhere. If you look across Europe, then there's still a very significant number of smallholder farms existing, but they are decreasing steadily over the years, which is the picture that you show here. What does it give us? Well, we have a food system where many people have sufficient and affordable food, often tasty as well, or at least comfortable to make. That across Europe, there's no real food poverty to speak of across Europe yet. We also have an obesity and diabetes epidemic, and it's on the rise. So despite the fact that we have all these food, we have additional problems. And we have a slew of environmental problems related to the agricultural system. So if I think about those problems, then, well, one way to look at it is is by the perspective of the work of the Stockholm Resilience Institute, which has plotted a number of environmental crises and checked, are we still within safe operating spaces of our planet? And if you look at the crises mentioned here, quite a number of them are very closely related to the way our agricultural systems are organized. So if you look at biosphere integrity, over in this corner, I hope you can see my mouse cursor, because otherwise it doesn't make any sense that I say over in this corner. Anyway, genetic biosphere integrity, functional biosphere integrity are both very much at risk and beyond safe operating space. And why is that? Because also agricultural land use encroaches on natural area where wildlife still thrives. If you look at climate change, we're looking at, well, obviously big problems in CO2 concentration. Parts of these are caused by agricultural emissions, and the reverse is also true. Changes in climate also affect agricultural yields and bring new problems. If you look at freshwater change, which obviously is very important for irrigation, you're looking at changing precipitation patterns across Europe and the needs for fresh water for agriculture, you see big problems. And finally, the biogeochemical flows, phosphate and nitrogen, obviously also are the same elements that are used in artificial fertilizer. One of the main drivers for agricultural revolution also is one of its biggest problems. And those, again, are related to, the whole biodiversity crisis, which is reflected in a number of more local crises, more chaotic effects like nitrogen crisis politically. This is a picture from the Netherlands, but you could take the same in Brussels. You could take it across Belgium. You could go to Germany and see the same thing. Often population growth is mentioned as a main driver for agricultural change. If you look at how Europe is developing, we're basically flattening out as of now. But if you look at the bigger picture, then you see still that you can expect a lot more people that need a fair access to affordable food, and that will be a problem. And then if you look at how we're developing in terms of food and health, the picture's not looking so optimistic. In fact, we're creating more inequality socially through the way our food system is organized. And to me, all these developments together represent a transition challenge. We need to feed more people with less inputs and with less emissions and less arable lands in populations that increasingly suffer from obesity and diabetes, while farmers increasingly struggle to secure an income. And the question then is, can we meet this challenge, this whole slew of external pressures? Can we meet these challenges through further optimization, through doing things better, or do we really need to get our attention elsewhere to the pioneers, the experiments that do things differently, that are maybe doing better things? And if this is what you agree with, and I do, then that's also a reason to look elsewhere and to see where can I find the inspiration for an agri-food transition. I'm just giving a couple of very, very short definition stuff. So what do we mean by a sustainability transition? We mean a very structural change of how a societal system is organized. We are aware that it's not just technology, but it's also a co-evolution in infrastructure, institutions, markets, culture, and environment. And we see this as a development of one stable state that is very unsustainable towards a different, more sustainable state. And how would that look like over time? So on the top left corner, you still see what we have. We're trying to do things better over there, still optimizing. But if you look at all these crises, and if you look at the political responses, the societal chaos, you can easily see that there's a lot of destabilization, chaos coming up. Whereas on the other hand, there's so many initiatives, and we have 4 among us ourselves right today, that are trying to do things really, really, really different in many different ways. That's the experimentation. I would say we're way beyond experimentation already. There's so many lessons that we can learn from initiatives on the ground that are already trying to put into place different agri-food systems, more extensive, lower inputs, more socially organized, more inclusive. We need to help them emerge, try to make them replicate or help them replicate. And that also means that we need to learn what kind of rules and regulations, that's the top right corner, might help similar initiatives to grow and stabilize into a new, more sustainable system. And finally, obviously, this also means saying goodbye to certain things that we have right now, but we can't sustain in the future. So what are we talking about today? We have 4 presenters. I just want to name them because I'm so proud of what they've already established. In Slovakia, the initiative, I'm going to butcher some of the names, sorry, but I'll try to pronounce it correctly. Klimata Potrebuje, the Climate Needs You initiative that includes also sourcing of healthy food, for instance, for young people in schools in a bioregion. In the municipality of Wageningen, we have the initiative Streekwaar, which I try to translate into regional fare towards a Wageningen sustainable bioregion. More about that from Ada and Janneke. In Stockholm, Reformaten, they want het positief globaal maatsysteem, där det lätt att äta rätt, which means where it's easy to eat right. And they also say that matsystemet fucked, and I don't know how to translate that myself. But I'm sure you can see what they try to convey there. And in Italy, Asfodelo, which is again a more bioregion production-oriented initiative that really tries to say goodbye to chemical pesticides in their region of Cellamonte. The only thing I want to share as a final note, as a transition scholar, the main reason I think these experiments are all so important is that they are the innovative practices that harbor the potential for radical change. So if you think you need if you think you have a transition challenge, then you need to know where to look. And I would say these experiments is where we need to look, because they offer a learning ground to better help us understand systemic barriers and opportunities. And that's why I look back at a very interesting shared Green Deal project with all their efforts and results. That's it from me. You can see I'm looking forward to hearing from them more personally, and I wish you all a very fruitful webinar. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Beje. It's very exciting to see what's going on and in which historical context we can place this, these projects. So I think it's about time that we head to the local level. And for that, I want to give the floor first to Pelle Bengtsberg. He is part of Reformaten in Sweden, and I would love to hear from you what your project is about. Pelle, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Jorit. And what a morning. I've been called a success story and a best practice this early in the day. I am in Stockholm representing Reformaten, and I will talk about a healthy and sustainable food environment for all as part of our shared Green Deal experiment. We'll try to be quick here, even under 5 minutes, but we'll see how it goes. Reformaten is a joke with words. Reform, and then maten, which means the food. And just as PJ said, one of our informal slogans is matsystemet är fucked, and we leave that untranslated. But another slogan of ours is that it should be easy to eat right. We believe that the consumer responsibility on policy level, but also on legal level, is too heavy on the individual, and when the individual is referred to only as a consumer. Instead, we want to see the question about a healthy and sustainable food system as a systemic and political question. We also believe that we, as a civil society organization, have a strong role to bridge different sectors, and especially the sectors working in silos. Because also, as PJ said, a lot is happening. A lot of different actors and forces are working for change. And we want to be the power and force that enable a big and systemic political change. There is a table of content of what I want to talk to you about today, but basically what I will do is to walk us through quickly the experiment that we've done here on local scale in Stockholm, and then see what it amounted to, and then maybe have time for some questions after it. PJ said it himself perfectly, a state-of-art introduction to the food system problems. We work on a national scale here in Sweden while saying that there is no Swedish food system. We are in a global food system, hence the global food system needs to change. But with the opportunity to be a local partner to Shared Green Deal, we saw that we can look down in Stockholm, where we are based, and work with a geographical scope of the city. A city is a city, right? It emphasizes the crisis that exists in society, since it is since there's a lot of people there. If you look at Stockholm, you will see public health numbers alarming. You will see how they align with social inequality. You will see effects of climate crisis and a lot of inequality. Here we wanted to use the concept of food environment, something that we see as the interface between the eater and the vast food system, and how we in fact as eaters are controlled with our consumption by this system, which is the food environment, that sort of steer our food consumption. We also wanted to use this experiment to fill what we call the buzzword of food environment with meaning. If we look at the farm to fork, it already says that you should have a healthy and sustainable food environment. You should promote that. But what does it actually mean? And we see the same thing in national and regional policies, that this food environment word is used a lot, but we haven't really filled it with meaning. So these guys were the ones that we wanted to connect with, the local change makers that work for a better food environment, but in a lot of cases without knowing it. We have the architect, the school chef, the artist, the fruit vendor, all of these actors working for a healthy and sustainable food environment without necessarily being food actors. We did a series of 3 assemblies, food assemblies. The first we did in one of the areas of the cities that the city would call a socially exposed area or a socially vulnerable area. This is an area that is very represented in bad health, and we were in an art center, and we wanted to map out the problem to see where do we start. For food here, we had from a female cooperation working to use food as a means of integration and justice. And we used the X-curve model provided to us by Drift to map out and see the transition dynamics and where we are. For the second assembly, we were in a food bank. Now we knew the problem formulation with the food environment in Stockholm, and we wanted to see where are we heading? What do we want to see instead? Hence, we were in a food bank where a warm plate is served throughout the day for only 1 to 2 euros. This is a very sustainable way of access food, but is it sustainable on the ecological side of it? Not at all. But it could stimulate our conversation on what is sustainable food and what is sustainable access to food. What are the trade-offs when trying to find a sustainable system? Here we worked with visioning because we gathered and informed our individual visions into one common vision that has become the vision for Stockholm's food environment. Throughout the second and the third session that you see here, we had a long co-creative process of refining and enforcing the vision that all of these local change makers have wrote together. So for the third food assembly, we could invite all of the participants, the local change makers, into the future. One of the things that has been central throughout this experiment with food environment is that we need local hubs, we need community kitchens, places where food is central in the city, but you are not there as a consumer only. So then we invited for the third assembly, the actors, the participants into one of these community kitchens of the future. And we started by reading our vision and then cooking together to be able to work with a backcasting session and see what do we actually need to reach this vision. It turns out that we need to focus on 3 different areas, and the level of competence here is the city. So we're talking with the municipality. We need to be looking at cultivation, advertising, and public administration. We have a series of policy proposals within each section, and I will just say one of them in each section. In cultivation, we have potatoes, not petunias. We want to see that some of the decorative plants in the city would instead be replaced with edible plants. When we look at advertising, we see that the city has banned advertising promoting CO emissions, such as flight commercials in the public transport system. And we want to expand that to also ban junk food in the public transport system. If we look at public administration, market for markets, that is one policy proposal to say that the food markets that actually exist, the open markets in the city, should not pay rent for being on the land during the day that they are in the markets. And this is a series of 12 pretty specific and niche policy recommendations that we can actually give to the city that is now forming its first city policy for food, because throughout this experiment, also the city of Stockholm sort of woke up and they are writing their first food city policy right now. The 23rd of May, we are inviting them to us to give our input to the city's food policy, which is specifically about food environment, to get food environment as a specific section in the food policy, but also to give our very specific food policy recommendations sprung from the experiment. I crossed my 5 minutes, but I want to say thank you. And here you see our webpage, our socials, and my email if you want to keep the conversation going anywhere. And thank you so much to the Shared Green Deal, Drift, and Slow Food Youth for doing this with us.
Thank you so much, Pelle. For everybody who has any questions, we are using this session, the Q&A box. And I see some questions already came in for Pelle. So I would like to utilize this moment to ask them, starting with a question coming from Chris. Chris is interested to hear about the recruitment challenges and lessons for engaging people in vulnerable communities. Often these sorts of workshops find it easier to gather together those that are already engaged, as opposed to marginalized by society. Do you have any recommendations for this?
Yes. We had recruitment difficulties when doing our initial mapping with what we called local change makers. And the biggest one was to reach the city, to have actual policy offers participate throughout the process. The other one was to reach food producers, farmers, even though we are in a city, farmers and food producers exist. And the third one was to reach vulnerable communities, as you ask. My recommendation in this is to call, let the phone go warm, and constantly invite. We decided early on the project to not use any economic remuneration for participating, but instead we could offer, for example, public transport, to have that paid for to be able to participate, and also to constantly move. These 3 assemblies that we did were in 3 very different parts of the city, so we wouldn't lock ourselves and position ourselves in one part of the city. And to always offer something. We had the meal as a center in our meetings. So that could be something that could be one reason to come, if nothing else. But all of these like fine strategies of how to engage actors, in the end of the day, for us, it's really about calling, texting and calling, and not emailing. That's my most hands-on.
Thank you so much, Bella. Another question came in from Rosie. She is very interested in Reformaten linking a few times to health outcomes and wonder whether many of the change makers you or the other locations worked with were working in health. In the UK, it feels that like they are only at the start of recognizing as a big society the big cost of poor food on health. And this is still seen as individualized responsibility.
I think we have a different starting position because the Nordic nutritional recommendations have included health for a lot of years, but first recently they also included environment and climate. So maybe we come from another area there, or another starting point, because health was with us from the beginning. We had one professor of global health from the Karolinska Institute in Stockholm, and one doctor working with environmental health, that is the environment that you live and operate in, with us. So our challenge was instead to breach it into environment and climate, since it would be easy for us to be stuck in consumption, but we always wanted to breach it into production as well, using food environment as this interface. I don't know if it answers your question.
Thank you. Yeah, that's a really good point about how you were starting to open up that conversation away from just the consumption side. Be interested to hear more about that, but I'm not trying to take over. So.
Later this session, we will have a time also to dive in deeper in these kind of thematics. So I would also recommend saving some of that energy for that moment. For now, I would like to go to a question that Nevanka sent in. And then I would say we move over to the next presentation. Nevanka is asking which target group engaged the most in transition in potato instead of flowers and towns. Is it older lonely people, or the young groups, more or less educated, employed, unemployed? What is their main motivation in order to participate?
I understand the question, and I wish I could say that it's this very specific sort of actors that rooted for it, but honestly, I cannot say, because it comes out from a series of workshops, the final policy recommendations, where we constantly have started, as we did with our vision of the future, we constantly started with individual visions, then going into groups, and then going into bigger groups to always merge and find the trade-offs and the wins when you merge the different individual views together. And the same thing with the final recommendations that we have now connected to the vision for how to reach them. It's been a constant co-process of just finding common ground. So the potatoes instead of petunias recommendations that we now give to the city on the 23rd is one of the common ground recommendations, where the majority have found it to be something that we are willing to place our names on and be behind when we deliver it to the city's food strategy. So I cannot say that it was a specific group of participants that's rooted for it, but instead everyone accepted it or were willing to put their name on it.
Thank you so much, Bella. Thank you for everybody sending in their questions. It's very nice to have these engaging moments, and this is exactly what this webinar is for. So please keep them going. Bella, we will get back to you during the Q&A session. For now, I would like to move towards Slovakia, where Zuzana Kukova is part of the project Klimata Potrebuje, if I say that correctly. We would love to hear more from you how the project is impacting the local reality. Over to you.
Yes, thank you, but I cannot share the screen. I don't know.
All right, we will quickly make sure that you will become the co-host. I'm sorry for that. In the meanwhile, I would like to address another question that came down in the Q&A. This session is recorded. It will be shared with all of you. And there, if I saw it correctly, in the chat, you can also find the live transcribe, the transcribe of this session. So there you find also the key moments. I see that Zuzana is sharing her screen already.
Yeah.
So over to you.
Hello, so I'm Zuzana. I'm from Košice, Slovakia. It's a city on the eastern part of Slovakia. It's second biggest city, but it has only like around 250,000 people, so it's a small city. And we were working with the area of like eastern Slovakia, which is the region where we are located. And our main topic was public catering and local food producers. Just a quick introduction about us. We are an organization which is focused on climate change. So Klimata Potrebuje, in translation, climate needs you. And we are working a lot with local communities. We had like 3 very active communities, one in Bratislava in the capital, one in Banská Bystrica in the central Slovakia, and one in Košice in eastern Slovakia. Yes, so we are working with these communities, and we started only in 2020, and since 2022 we are.
Zuzana,
yes.
sorry to interrupt. In case you're moving your slides, they're not moving on our screen.
It happened to me before. Okay, so I have to do it this way.
Now it moves, yes.
Yeah, yes, okay. I don't know why it's like with my computer, it never works. Like, yeah, with the Zoom. Okay, so we started in 2020 with like one big petition, and since 2022, we are more like developed as an organization, and we are growing quickly. So we are starting to focus on different local problems or local issues, and trying to get involved in local policies connected with the climate change. So we have several projects which we are developing now. And for Košice, we decided to work with the topic of sustainable food systems. The topic was very new for us at the beginning. So as we went through the process, we were learning a lot. So at the beginning, we focused to kind of like narrow down for objectives of the project. So first one is to create a short supply chain between local food producers and schools in the region. Second one is to reduce food waste connected with the school food. Third one is to achieve change in the school supply system. I will talk about this a bit later. And fourth one is to promote education on sustainable food within the parents, pupils, but also people working with the school food in the canteens. Okay, so we developed our ideas through 3 assemblies in the autumn. One was in October, second one was in November, and third one was in December. We worked similar to our partners from other countries with the tools which were provided by the leading partners, and so we started with the X curve to identify problems within the food system. Then we connected with the visualization of the kind of like to creating a common vision. And third one was to create specific solutions for it. Yeah, I will. We also, like in our group, we had people from the city. Then we had people from NGOs, like Really Healthy School, which is strongly focused on school food, but not so much on the food system. Then we had some people from farms and so on. So our group was very diverse, but it was small since we are just starting with the topic. But for us, it was a great opportunity to kind of create a network of people who are thinking about this. So together we created a vision for future of sustainable food system connected with the school food. So it took like 10 years from now. We're talking a lot about food procurement because like we're working with the city of Košice, which is like purchasing food for kindergartens and elementary schools through procurement, which is not very like open to small local farms because they are like big amounts. So we were talking a lot about how to avoid procurement, how to go through direct purchase. It's possible. We found a way, but there needs to be a lot of education on the level of city and on the level of school managers, school canteen managers. So there is necessary to have enough information about suppliers in the area, enough information about the principles of green public procurement, and enough information about like what is healthy eating, what is seasonality, availability of local food. Then the vision continues like with minimizing waste. So we know that around the school food is a lot of waste because like if kids have 15 minutes to eat their lunch, they are not able to eat all of it. For example, it's necessary for them to know from the food from where the food comes, and to have opportunity maybe to meet the farmers or grow their own food in a school garden. And then farmers and local caterers, they need this information about ways in which they can get involved in supplying schools, because for now, for farmers, it's something that it's not accessible for them because of the criteria of a public procurement and big amounts of food they would need to provide the whole year. And we're talking a lot about like farming profession, which in Slovakia doesn't have like a prestige, we can say, and enough like educational opportunities. So we're talking about this necessary change. We went through like several steps, like how we can change the system, but we don't have enough time to talk about it. But our solution was to create like one platform, online platform, to connect local schools with the local farmers. Because even when like schools are buying like directly from the farmers, they need to have like 3 different offers, competitive offers, and so on. So there are some like criteria they need to follow. And this platform would help them to find the farmers, to have like competitive offers, and to go through all the process which is necessary. We would like to collect data to analyze local food system possibilities, like about like what amount of food we can get into school canteens. We would like to like negotiate with municipalities about purchase criteria and to connect them with procurement office, because like they just don't communicate effectively, obviously. So we would like to have like one-stop source of information for all of this, like to have like complex information about it, that it's possible to buy directly from farmer if you follow this criteria, if you like, for example, separate different types of foods, you don't buy it in one like package, and so on and so on. There are ways, but they just don't know how to do it. And then there was some kind of like plus things connected with the platform, like motivate young people to start sustainable food business, to support creation of original regional products, and of course to provide information about the impact of food systems to climate change. So this is my contact information. I will be happy to connect with you if you would like to get to know more about this project or about this type of climate change initiative as we are. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Susanna. This is very, very interesting. With an eye on the time, I will go through the next speaker and get back to the Q&A at the dedicated time slot for that. So with that, I would like to give the floor to our partner from the municipality of Wageningen in the Netherlands. And Eduardo Caceres will guide us through the program that they're carrying out. Welcome, Eduardo.
Hi. Let me share my screen. Am I co-host already?
We'll take care of that straight away. There you go.
Yay. Thank you very much. Yes, so our project, we call it Rooting Deeper in the South Veluwe bioregion. Our bioregion is a territory, it's about 10,000 hectares. And in this territory, which is a very old territory in the Netherlands, where some of the first agriculture started, we started working on the foundations of Streekwaar, which is an agroecological producers union. One second. So we are looking here in our stroomgebied at a territory where we have lots of agroecological producers. In our union, we have 40 producers, and they are all scattered around our territory. And so one of the things that we saw, because we are very much developed in the practices of agroecology, for us it was really important to connect to other people, also from different areas in our region. So for our first assembly, we invited about 70 people that are all working in different parts of society. So we had policymakers, artists, we had people from the university, we had students, we had people that are farmers, of course. We also had people that do catering, work in restaurants. And so we brought all of these people together to have, first of all, a look at the qualities of our territories. So it's because we have such a long history in agriculture, and because we have such a diverse community also, we saw that it's very important to connect everyone and to have a good look at the qualities that we want to build on. So one of the things that came out of our first assembly is that as a collective, as a community, that if we take care of our place, then the place can take care of us in the future. So our first assembly was in September, and our second assembly was last February. Both of the assemblies we did at one of the farms of the people of Streekwaar. The first one was at the Ommuurde Tuin, and the second one was at the Grote Voort van Remekertjes. In our second assembly, we really looked at our collective history. So we had a deep dive in our collective past in order to have a collective vision for the future, and to also hear from pioneers from our region and to understand about the foundations that we can build upon. So to get good ideas of these farmers. These farmers, they work in very innovative ways, and so we have lots of really good examples of farmers and of food producers in our territory. So we have really strong beacons for us when it comes to inspiration, and also really good examples. Our third assembly will be next week. And what we're looking now in our third assembly is to have a really good look at our territorial economy. What we see, because we have this strong foundation and so many food producers that are innovative, what we're now seeing is that we need to go beyond our food systems, and that we really need to start looking at a different way to our economy. And in order to do so, we really want to connect with different fields in our territory. So with different people from society, and see what we can do. So some of the ideas that we have is to take back some of the old traditional producing fields that are now full of monocultures. We want to bring them back and look if we can create new systems that are more about integrating nature, that are more about harvesting water, and that can be in service of future generations, but then under the principles of the commons. So that's a very important thing that we see when it comes to what we would like to see in the future. Another thing that we're seeing is that the necessity to have a territorial fund where we as producers can maybe put some of our earnings in, and so that we as the community can invest in the future generations. So those are some of the ideas that came out of our assemblies. So that's just in short. If you would like to read and see more, then you can go to stroomgebied.org. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Eduardo. I see a quick question coming up from Rosie. She's asking how you find running events within a farming location impacted on what was able to be discussed, or maybe how the conversation was opened up there.
So for the first assembly, first of all, when we asked people to join our assemblies, we invited them not by the basis of their profession, but by the basis that they are citizens of our territory. So first of all, we invited everyone as a citizen. And then the first conversation we had together was in a very big circle. So we had a human-to-human conversation, and we had a few questions prepared to open up the conversations that were really focused about how we connect to our place and what are the qualities that our place has for us. So we had these open discussions. Another thing that we did is we did collective story harvesting. So in the first assembly, we had 6 people from our territory, and we asked them to tell about their life story and their relationship with the territory. So we started to get all these specific things that we were looking for, like qualities of the territory, moments of transformation in the territory. And then in between these talks that we had and in between these circlings, we had moments where we did food sharing. So people had a lot of space to talk with each other. In the second assembly, we always start in a circle, and we always invite people as citizens. And so we always have these human-to-human conversations first. And in the second one, we also did a theater piece. And in that theater piece, we had the theater makers. They were talking as if they were the spirit of our watershed. And at the same time, we also had a talk about the deep history. And we had the farmer from the place that we were, they were telling their life story. And then after these 3 pieces, people came together and we had open conversations about all the qualities that they heard. I don't know if this answers the question, or if there's more questions coming, then.
I see Rosie nodding, so I think that question is answered. And also to you, later we will dive into a Q&A session.
Sure.
Before we do that, I want to give the floor to the final project that's part of our food stream. And for that, I want to introduce Costanza Guazzo. She is from Asfodelo, which is based in Celamonte in northern Italy. And today she will explain us how her association is transforming the local reality. Constanza, over to you.
Thank you, Jorrit. So yeah, I'm very happy to be here. Thank you for having me on behalf of my association, Associazione Asfodelo. Thank you also to PJ, because I had some issues with the slide presentation, so it will be sharing my PDF presentation. So we are from Italy, from Monferrato Casalese, and PJ, we can go to the next slide. Our project was called Locomoth and was focused on the threats of pesticide use in traditional agricultural methods for the health of the environment, for pollinators, and also for human health. So we were focused on the area of Monferrato Casalese, and our association, Associazione Asfodelo, is mainly focused on the recovery of abandoned land in the area. We focused in this particular project more on the risks of pesticide for an area like Monferrato Casalese, which is focused on winemaking, some other type of cereal production, and in general is very agriculture oriented. So we focus on different. We use different methods in our free assemblies, as the other groups mentioned. And PJ, we can go to the next slide, and maybe the one after that even. Thank you. We identified 4 main problems linked to pesticide use. And the first one is the present use of large quantities of pesticides, which are in many cases dangerous for the health of our area. But also we found in our group discussions with citizens, producers, winemakers, and institutional actors, in particular, that there is a rigidity to change among the producers, in particular when they are older. And also, on the other side, consumers have still little knowledge on how a food system works. And at the same time, producers were concerned about the mismanaged funding without control, which is still common in among funding for producers. So we used different participative methods, as we can see in the next slide. We had group discussions using the X-curve, forecasting, backcasting, and we focused on in particular, visioning a nice future in 2060 for Monferrato Casalese. Thank you for the compliment on our posters. And so we had different ideas spread out from the 4 participants groups that discuss the future of agriculture and a future narrative for our study areas. And through the discussion, we identified 4 main points in the next slide. Thank you. And the first one is awareness. we want to spread awareness on the product origin, on the health impact of the food, in particular through school education. Then we want to focus on repopulation of the areas of Monferrato Casalese. Farmed areas in our vision will not be only areas where food is produced, but they will be cared for and a place where people know each other, where communities are built among people, but also with nature. And abandoned buildings will be redeveloped and live again. And then the third one is just food prices. As we had producers, we focused a lot on the need to survive as producers and have safeguard systems to protect farmers from food price fluctuations, and also on the possibility to build distretti biologici, so coordination between little farmers in the area. And then we focus a bit on agroecology, so on natural pest control, mechanical methods. So in the future, we want to have a better implementation of the ecosystem and a good management of the agriculture and its relationship with the nature, the natural land. So if you go on the next slide, you can see other photos of our discussion. We were in the slow food building in Monferrato Casalese, and we also shared a lot of food, as other groups mentioned, because it was really a good way to give space to the producers that brought the food to us, and then to start to build a community. So in the next slide, you can see a final quote that we thought was a good way to summarize what we discussed in the end, which is regenerate soil to regenerate the society, because we want to focus not just on biodiversity, on ecosystems, on soil, which are the foundation of our discussion, but also on knowledge and relationships in the area and build on them. So the main action we identified are education on these alternatives through school projects, on events aimed at raising consumers' awareness in particular, and on the building of an agricultural community between the producers. So we identified some pilot action, but in general, that was it. I think I overcame the 5 minutes largely. So I want to thank you a lot for this space to present our work, and thank you again for this opportunity.
Thank you for being with us, Costanza. It's always very interesting to hear from you and what you're doing. And I'm very keen to start and continue the conversation during our Q&A session. Before we go there, we wanted to highlight a few other initiatives that are taking place within the scope of engaging youth around the thematics of the Green Deal. And from that perspective, I would like to introduce a bit deeper what Slow Food Youth Network as an organization is doing. Slow Food Youth Network is a global network active in over 120 countries globally, with thousands of activists, like people who are in this call, trying to work towards a more good, clean, and fair food system available for everybody. Within Europe, there's a few projects, two specifically, that I would like to stress in order to engage specifically youth around these thematics and give them the opportunity to raise their impact. The first project I would like to highlight is around the issue of food waste. As you might know, 40% of our food is being thrown away before it reaches the plate of us as consumers, and that's something terrible in times where hunger globally is rising every single day again. And in order to address that, our network on starting from Berlin has launched a concept called a disco soup. A disco soup is a party, a so-called party, where food is being harvested from markets or farms where they cannot be sold anymore. And together with a wider community, bypassers, and then the joy of music and some dancing people, we're uniting people, educating them about food waste, the way you can still cook with products that might not look perfectly, which are not the perfect straight carrots, or might be a broccoli with like a small budge into the vegetable. This idea of coming together, cooking together, and educating is something very, very relatable and very easy to engage people with. What happened since the last 15 years, where it started again in Berlin years ago, is that currently there's a global movement which is working every year towards the final Saturday of April, which is this Saturday, the 27th of April. We're currently in over 100 places globally. Youth will unite in order to connect with their local community, in order to serve food waste via disco soups that are being organized all over the globe. So far, over 80,000 kilos of food has been saved from the bin with this zero marketing campaign. And this is a great opportunity to really engage with people around the different issues within the food system. Another project that I would like to stress with, again, an eye at the time, is the Slovak Youth Network Academy, which is happening in a variety of European countries. And the Slovak Youth Network Academy is an educational program in which 25 young professionals from all throughout the food chain, from student to marketeer, from farmer to chef, gather together and travel to the different steps of the food chain, from dairy production to healthcare, to food supply chains, to fisheries, and to politics, and many others. The idea of this academy is that by traveling together and highlighting and stressing in an open conversation what is the status quo of our food system, people are developing their own values, and their values are being tested by their peers in their educational program. Within these programs, we see that the future food leaders, the people who are making the decisions at board tables, maybe 5 years later, are being educated and learn how to take the responsibility for their step in the food system. Currently, we have close to 1,000 alumni within the European food system that have been participating in these academy programs, and it has been a source of different food transition initiatives all throughout Europe. Two that are very interesting to mention are, for example, a food waste restaurant, which grew out to be a distribution center for food products that cannot be sold in the supermarkets anymore, but still provides for hundreds of restaurants and canteens within Europe. Another great example is the introduction of food education within the Dutch reality, and the promotion of food education within primary schools. These were two small examples that I wanted to stress as examples that of activities that contribute to the Green Deal thematics and really involve youth in order to educate them further, to take them from the opportunity of responsibility into taking actions and actually changing the food system. With that, I would like to get a bit more interactive with all of you. We've heard 4 fantastic examples of local projects taking place underneath the umbrella of the Shared Green Deal program. We've heard from P.J. Beers how food transition is being shared. And I see there are some questions in the Q&A box popping up, in the chat popping up. In case you have troubles finding the Q&A box or adding your question to it, feel free to ask your question in the chat. I will try to keep an eye out for that as well. First, I would like to get back to Pelle. I think you're still here with us. I don't see you on my screen right now, but I'm very curious to, there you are. I'm very curious to see what was the most interesting encounter you had during the different assemblies and why, and mainly even more important, where that encounter was, since you stressed that you were going via a variety of different realities in Stockholm.
I think that, thank you for the question, and I think that the most interesting encounter throughout these 3 food assemblies were always based or in connection with the food and how we wanted to use that. The first, or am I froze? I think I froze there for a second, did I? The first food assembly, we worked with this female cooperative that uses food as a mean of integration. And the second one, we were in the food shelter, where we used food there as a symbolism for what is a sustainable meal of the future. And in the third assembly, we cooked together, all of us, to see how tasty and delicious and fun the future can be, since we were in our future vision. And not to say any specific actor or participant, but it was always down to the meals. That's when it was most interesting and most fun and maybe knowledge and experience sharing. Then it's always, I mean, it's always heartwarming and surprising to see this lady that's been around forever as a policy officer of the city, all of a sudden exchanging with this young radical guy that runs a food shelter and food waste initiative, or the artist that uses public space as a mean of justice, all of a sudden being together with the I don't know, but you see what I want to say, this like cross-sectoral and intergenerational and whatever bridging meetings that we really wanted to use the Shared Green Deal platform and the series of food assemblies to facilitate, because we came into it with a clear vision that within this food assembly series that we are going to do, and we knew from the beginning that we are going to work with local change makers, as we call them in this project. And there were also some criteria to which local change maker you should direct your focus at. But we knew from the beginning that we want to use this chance and opportunity, and to be fair, funding, to work with actors and connect with actors that are not within the food system. We want to now connect with change makers and actors that work for a better food environment, but maybe necessarily not within this niche food, quite academic sometimes system actor, but instead people that do good and try to promote through various ways a healthy and sustainable food environment. But hopefully, we thought from the beginning doing it without even knowing that they are promoting a healthy and or sustainable food environment. So all of those meetings and the connections that we could make really were the most interesting.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Pelle. I would like to pass the word to Susanna. I'm very curious. You have been, in some ways positioned as a climate movement, and the climate movement not always goes hand in hand with the let's say the farmers movement. I'm very curious to hear what the responses are from local farmers on the work that you're doing as a climate movement, but also supporting them in order to provide the local procurement.
Yes, so we had the connection with Association of Young Farmers in Slovakia, which are young farmers who are open to collaborations, and like they are communicating with European Union, and they are much more like open to to different types of topics. So we got our kind of like a target group of farmers. We didn't have kind of like this like big farms involved in the project, it would be much more different. Especially like we had like a huge protest at the beginning of this year, and so on. Some of these farmers like applied, but they never showed up. So we don't know actually about their like opinions on like climate change and these types of like, you know, like innovative approaches and the projects. But with Association of Young Farmers, we have a really nice connection, and I think we will continue working with them and to target small and young farmers through them.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much. I also got in a question from Maita van der Mark for you, Susanna. With regards to the status currently on procurement regulations of the local government, are there any steps planned within the project?
Yes, yeah, we thought, as many schools think, that all of the school food needs to be purchased through procurement procedure, but it's not necessary. We spoke with the procurement office about this, and many schools, they don't need to go through the procedure. They can do kind of like, it's called like direct purchase in Slovakia. It's like that you can buy without procurement. You just need to provide like free competitive offers that you didn't buy the most expensive one, but it's much less paperwork and all of these kind of like things, and it can happen much more often than, like, for example, here, like through the procurement process, like they buy or they contract big supplier for 2 or 3 years. So for one, like for small farmer, it's not possible to get into the system. So, but many schools are afraid not to go through procurement process, that they will have problems or they would not follow the rules. But there is a possibility. We just need to provide education to them. And I already spoke with one school in Košice, and they said like, yes, that they are buying their food. They don't buy it through the city, which is good news, but they just need to learn how to do it more effectively, like through the direct purchase, so they don't need to go into the procurement system, because the amounts of like, there are just a few schools in the whole Slovakia who have so many pupils that they need to go through procurement, and they reach the amounts which are there. But it also depends on like how the kind of like contract is formulated. If it's for fruits in general, then they will reach the limit. But it's, for example, for apples separately, then for, I don't know, for meat separately, you know, and so on, then they will not reach the limit. So it's kind of like teaching them how to work within the system more effectively.
Thank you so much, Susanna. I would like to move over to Wageningen. Eduardo, you were mentioning in your presentation that you were bringing a lot of different stakeholders together, and you kind of explained how you did, but I would like to dive a bit deeper. So how did you manage to have so many different stakeholders, not always related to the food system, but how did you manage to have them discuss a specific thematic like the food bioregion?
So, you know, everyone that we invited, as I mentioned in the presentation, is an inhabitant of our bioregion. And so talking about these themes, food and water and ecology and taking care of our surroundings, it's all about a sense of belonging. So when we talked to people and invited them, we sort of tried to have conversations about the topic of belonging.
That's wonderful. And I also see from the group, from the participants in this webinar, another question from someone who would like to learn more. There's the question that someone would like to very much bring this bioregion awareness to the cross-border region Nijmegen-Kleef, which is for the people not from the Netherlands. It's very close to the bioregion of Wageningen, because you share the same biosystem: river, woods, hills, soil type, biodiversity, agricultural history. Will your project publish any of the materials that can be read later on?
If you go to our website, www.stroomgebied.org, then you can actually read about what we did in the last assemblies, and you can also read what our approach is. And there's also a film, it's 5 minutes, where you can see what we did in the last assembly, and you can hear participants talk about it. It also has English subtitles, so if you're not Dutch, then you can still have a look. We also have English information on the website. And it's really great to hear that in Nijmegen-Kleef, there are also people thinking about this bioregional approach. For us, it's something that makes a lot of sense because in the area where we live, we have the glacial formations, so we have a really set geophysical boundary, and it's really connected to the cultural history of the place. And I know that in Nijmegen you could have the same approach, and it would be great to have people from our neighboring bioregion discussing the same topics, and maybe we can have some synergies going on. So that would be wonderful.
Wonderful. I see Maita smiling in a happy way. So thank you for this connection. I hope you will visit each other and stay in touch in order to spread the transition further throughout the enlarged bioregion. Speaking of enlarging the impact of the region, I would like to go towards Costanza because it's approximately a month ago that we've been visiting Chiaramonte with a majority of the people who have been presenting today, and it was a wonderful experience to witness a rural area which is so vibrant, where there's so many beautiful events and activities happening. Do you think the model that you are creating in Chiaramonte is able to be replicated in other rural areas in either northern Italy or the wider Italian region, or even outside?
That's a good question. We were thinking about it also with the interviews after the assemblies with different participants. And the short answer, I think, is yes, because it's mostly based on relationships. So the first step, I would say, is starting from the people we already know in a different rural areas, in a different city than Monferrato Casalese, in different ways, but it just takes little steps, and then maybe we have the possibility to meet new people with an affinity towards the same focus that we have, and build on that. So maybe from a group of producers, many producers may have a traditional idea of agriculture, but there are two people with an affinity towards a new way of working in agriculture, and that's the building brick for a new community in the area. I would say with different characteristics, but everywhere that there are people, there is the possibility to build a community.
That gives a lot of hope, so thank you so much for that. I also got in a more technical question for you from Nuraldin Staya, if I pronounced that correct. I hope so. She or he then remarks that it's a great project, and is asking if you can explain if you found any alternative organic pesticides instead to use the chemicals that you're fighting in your area.
Yeah, okay. I'm not the right person to ask that, because I was the moderator of the discussion, and I'm a sociologist. I'm sorry that all the other people in the group are more helpful in this matter, but I mean, I think from what I learned, there are already a lot of alternatives. We have in Monferrato Casalese, there is a problem with Papillia japonica, and for the wine makers, and La Verroa for the bees, because we also had bee producers, and actually they were discussing more in general the fact that, for example, for the Papillia japonica, the main problem is that if you can use mechanical methods, but you have to take care of abandoned land too, because there are in our area there are a lot of abandoned vineyards, and they are the perfect place for these insects to spread out and then go back. Also, maybe you have an organic vineyard and you avoid using pesticides against Papillia japonica, but then you have abandoned land